What's going on, y'all, and welcome on in. Today, let's talk about the Hwayoung recall. I'm going to guide you guys. Number one, is Hwayoung worth it? As well as some important details you guys need to know if you do decide to recall. There's a few things like getting your slates back, getting imprints back. There's some important things that you guys can use to min-max, or at least make sure you get the best trade-off here if you do decide to recall. The common question right now is Hwayoung, is she dead? Is she still worth using? I'll touch base on that a little bit here, and then we'll cover if she is worth trading off, what should I trade her for? I'm not going to make a tier list or anything. We're going to speak a little bit more broadly as we want to talk about the whole recall in general, and I can't guide you guys each individually as every single one of y'all's accounts is different, but I'll do my best and give some general answers. And then if y'all need some extra help, please always ask in the comments. Or the best thing really is, guys, now it does help me bring y'all over to Twitch, but a lot of times if you really want me to give you the best answer to any scenario, I need to have a back and forth with y'all. I need to ask a few questions. What kind of player you are? What are your goals in E7? What do you have access to? So if you can, stop by the Twitch channel whenever. I know sometimes the schedule may not allow, but if you can, that'd be the best. Otherwise, hopefully this guide, I think, should be good enough for a majority of y'all, just to help guide you on your decision on the Hwa recall. All right, let's get into it. Okay, boys, before we talk about the recall details, we first need to ask, how bad were the Hwayoung nerfs? Or at least that's what a lot of people have been asking me all day. How bad were the nerfs? Is she still worth keeping? Should I recall, etc.? So let's answer question one. How bad were the Hwayoung nerfs? And let's pull up the balance page just so we can refer to it while we talk about it pretty briefly. The long and short of it is, guys, from what I've seen, is Hwayoung obviously is much worse after these nerfs, right? The skill 1 got affected. She lost some passive S2. It's passive attack from the skill 2. Now the skill 3, kind of a small silver lining, the skill 3 actually does more damage than before if the target's HP is high enough. As we all know, right, what got changed on the skill 3 is the penetration scaling, whereas before it was always 100%, always penetrated the target's defense. Now it's a scaling, but they also increase the damage, and this is a good and bad thing. Required max health difference amount increase. So essentially she's going to do more damage than previous if the target's health is higher than a certain threshold, and then everything below that threshold, I'll give some rough numbers, guys, don't take these as exacts, but let's say anything 25 26k and higher, Hwayoung will do more damage or the same damage as before. She'll be one-shotting those tanky units, and then as you get lower than that, 24, 23, 22, and especially anything like 16k, 15k, 14k, guys, she is not going to kill, or she's going to struggle, where before she would easily clean that up. Okay, so that's the long and short of it. The skill 3 at some ranges does more damage, and why that's important is some of y'all still need tank busters. She can still kill Apocalypse Ravis if their health is high enough, and I expect if we swap her artifact and potentially maybe try like Torrent sets, if you need a tank buster, guys, I think she can still take care of like very tanky Ravis, as well as certain other tank units that y'all might need to one-shot. Now, are there other options in the game that do that, for example? Yes. Units like Strays, but he's in Moonlight 5. Arunka can do that, given if there's a barrier. There's some other one-shotting units in the game. So Hwayoung is no longer as good as she used to be, but she still has a spot, and she's actually a little bit better in some scenarios. So I wanted to get that out of the way. There's a lot of other stuff we can talk about, like with the skill 1 nerfs, but let's just leave it at that. She's much worse than before, but she should still have a spot, and depending on how your account is looking, you may still need her to tank bust, to kill certain Ravis, not every Ravi, but things like that, okay? So just be aware and take that in consideration when you decide whether or not to recall. All right, let's go on to the next step, the next question. Alrighty, so with the post-nerf info in hand, if you guys are still deciding on recalling, let's go over a few things that you need to be aware of. The number one thing is, did your Hwayoung have any slates? So check if you have imprints. As you guys can see here, I have no imprints, so this is a no-brainer for me. But if you have slates or duplicate Hwayoungs that you might have put in, there's a little bit of an extra pro tip, little tip that y'all can do to get some to make sure you get the maximum amount of refund or resources back, as well as potentially getting your second or third, how many Hwayoungs you put in. You can actually tell Smilegate how many you want back. And then, guys, the best part is then you don't have to worry about if you want to keep a Hwayoung to tank bust. If maybe you're hoping she'll get buffed back a little bit in the future, then you can just make an easy choice of keeping one spare and then recalling the other one to get your selector, right? But overall, how you're going to check that is click this top right button, guys, the little blue bars. Go down to the cogwheel on the bottom, the settings, and then you're going to go into the customer support, okay? Follow along, because it's not the easiest to find in the beginning. There's other ways to reach this. I think there's an external website you guys can use as well, but this is the easiest way in-game. So under the FAQ, frequently asked help, click the number 1, the Hwayoung imprint information. All right. And then we click this blue link here for the chatbot link. So how to check my Hwayoung imprint info. So let's click that. We're in the chatbot section here. And then all we got to do is click verify exchange info. See what the bot says. And they want us to enter our nickname. So let's enter our nickname, guys. And then your server and click send. And the completed form is, there's no Hwayoung unknown slates available for exchange on the requested account. Please enter the correct nickname. Okay, so obviously, I just did that to run y'all through it. You guys need to check if you do have imprints. It's very important. Why? Number 1, so that you can ask for one of those Hwas back. Because if you don't ask, I believe it just turns into a slate. And there's one thing we need to talk about, guys. Slates are actually, there's 2 different types of slates. I know we're getting confusing, but we have things, this newly added feature called Slate of Fate. And then we have the normal slates that can be used on any 5-star, red, green, blue, moonlight, whatever it is. But the Slate of Fates only work for red, green, blue units, okay? Yeah, sorry. I was trying to close out of that screen. So 2 things. Check how many imprints you have. If you can ask for a spare Hwa back, then guys, this video is super easy for you. Keep one Hwa spare, use the second one as a selector, skip forward to the suggestions on what heroes you should trade her for. The second thing is slates. Please, guys, if you put a slate in here, and I know some people have, my Twitch chat had a bunch of people that put in unknown slates. Don't just recall. Ask for your unknown slates back. Because if you get the Slate of Fates, do I have any slates in here? Hopefully I'll put a picture on the screen. The Slate of Fate are not as good as normal slates because they can't affect Moonlight heroes. So make sure you get your slates back if you put them in. All right. Those are just some kind of fine print details that you need to make sure that you get the most advantages from. And then let's move on to the next step. I think we're going to talk about hero suggestions. All right. So what units should you trade Hwa for if you still decide to recall? Well, guys, you're going to have to double check what kind of account, what's on your account, I should say, and what units you might need. So I think, long story short, I think Hwa, after the nerfs, I think it's perfectly acceptable to recall her, even if she's your only copy. You might hear some people say, never recall a unit if it's your only copy. I think it's okay. Just based off the power level she's gotten to, she still has a spot. She's still usable in certain areas. You still might need her as a tank buster. But if you want to trade her for another strong 5-star RGB that will also help you on your account, I think that's perfectly fine. And then you can pick up Hwa later. It's not like she's never going to be able to you're never going to be able to get her again. She'll have a banner. You might pull her randomly. It's okay. Just make sure whatever you decide, you're okay with it and you don't regret your choices, right? So that's why I'm here. I'm going to try to help you all with that. So red, green, blues, what we can trade for. We can even trade for Lua. I'm just going to shotgun a bunch of units here, and maybe I'll show just a few. But mainly just ideas. Any strong RGB right now, guys, that is, if you like PvP primarily, let's talk about PvP heroes first. I think let's start with like Earth units, guys. Let me just sort by Earth. Things like Alencia, I think, are super strong. Obviously, we have units like Senya. Those are just amazing heroes to have access to right now, as they're both very strong, recently buffed. If we go into fire, I think units like maybe Fire Ravi is one. Not too much in the fire department. Politis, but you can get her from your season 2 selective, so be careful with that. Those are just a few examples in the fire range. And then if we go to ice, obviously, guys, units like Shu. Remember, you can access Lua as well. So Lua and Shu are going to be very good. Where's my Lua at? I haven't built her yet, but here she is right here. You know, units like that can be great choices. And I think you want to pick more powerful stuff, because some of y'all, if you really love Arya, guys, definitely pick Arya. She can be super strong in the right hands. Just be careful, because some of these units are either very hard to gear, right? Arya, I would say, is kind of a hard unit to gear depending on what you're using her for. And then you have units also that are a little bit more niche, which Arya fits that as well. You can't first pick Arya for the most part, otherwise you'll get countered and things like that. But the bruisers I kind of talked about before. And then if you can gear up a unit like Lua, Lua's going to be so powerful for a lot of different styles. I think you can't go wrong. So Lua, Politis, Shu, Alencia, Senya, if it's something like that that you're trading your Hwa for, I don't think any of y'all will regret it. Just do a little research. I have a bunch of guides here and on the Amazon channel talking about like the best RGBs, especially for free to play. Give those a look. And then, of course, if you want any extra questions, leave them in the comments. Oh, really quickly, guys, before I jump into the PvE section, and that's going to be super fast, just a few PvE examples, or just one, namely. I did want to mention, I forgot to talk about Zahak real quick. We spent a lot of today, a lot of my guys were testing him, and he is pretty insane, boys. So if you want a strong Earth unit as well, besides Valencia Senya, I think Zahak is super legit right now. He's also not really first pickable. As sometimes if he gets outsped, he can just die out of nowhere. But in the right hands, in the right comp, he answers a lot of different threats. And now with his newly received buffs and how his EE works with the S2 extra turn, I think he's absolutely insane at the moment. So this is a strong contender if you want to trade out that Hwa. Okay, for PvE, guys, the main one that I'm really only going to look at primarily is probably a unit like Tama, maybe Destina. Just remember, guys, there's some overlap. Sometimes you have like the Season 1 selective if you haven't done that yet. But like Tama, Destina also works for PvP, but you can pretty much pick whatever you want. Just identify first if you want to have a PvP hero, a PvE hero, and then, you know, go from there. But overall, just make sure you know that you want to nerf or recall the Hwa. So decide if you need to keep her as a tank buster, and then go ahead and pick whichever unit you think will give you the most value. And overall, guys, don't regret it too much, or just don't regret it at all, but don't worry too much is what I should say. As like I mentioned, Hwayoung's not a limited hero. You'll be able to get her in the future if she ever gets adjusted. If you ever decide you want her again, even just for collection, it's going to be fine. And that leads me to the last thing here, guys, and that is one other thing that some of y'all should try to consider. If you think Hwayoung after the nerf isn't good or good enough for you to use, but you don't want to get rid of her either for collection, or you want to make sure, maybe you want to try her later down the line, maybe you're hoping for some buffs in the future, then one other option, and this is what I'm going to be doing probably, is recall the Hwayoung, but pick her again. Now that sounds kind of silly, but what that means is I can get my previously invested 15 Molagora, Catalyst, and the Phantasmas. I believe I get some friendship stuff back too. All that stuff is in that Hwayoung detailed post, but we can get all our resources invested, save them, put them aside, put them in other units, and then I still keep my Hwa that I can either build up later or just keep for collection, whatever it might be, right? I think that's actually a very valuable option that a lot of people might overlook, and I've done that in the past for a lot of other recalled units because I still wanted to keep them around. I do kind of like collecting and make sure I have all the heroes that I can. This is kind of a hero collector game, so that is one valuable option. Don't overlook it. Okay, guys, please leave me any questions, and if it's a lot of questions, try and stop by the Twitch channel or get on Discord. And if I have time, I've been receiving a lot of messages lately, so I apologize, boys, if ever you've reached out to me and I can't answer. Just try to message me on Discord or ask in my general chat. I have a lot of helpful people on there as well. All right, guys, let me know actually what you decide to, if you decide to recall or not, and then let me know who you chose, and that might also help other people reassure them on their picks too. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck, don't worry about it too much, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. A lot of content to come. Peace out, everybody.